Hey everybody, welcome to Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. This is episode number 278 of our YouTube channel and podcast, and I cannot be more excited to continue sharing with you guys personal finance topics that I think could be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. Today, we are going to learn some lessons, and those lessons are going to be learned specifically from the book, The Millionaire Next Door, that was written by Dr. Thomas Stanley and Dr. William Danko. Right? I've got a copy of the book here. This is what the book actually looks like, right? This book's been around for quite a while, but it has some really good nuggets of wisdom when it comes to wealth building, when it comes to becoming a millionaire, and some things that are really practical for you and I that we can do to actually reach that millionaire status. So I want you to stick around for all of those tips and tricks and a bunch more in today's episode. Before we get started though, if you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions, and you and I can begin working together, pushing towards your long-term financial goals, and then ultimately pushing you on towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single individual who's watching or listening to this show on a day-to-day basis. Now, I probably read The Millionaire Next Door for the first time maybe 5-6 years ago. And this is a book that I think has a lot of things within it that can really help us. And you can go pick up a copy. It's a book that's been in publication for quite a while now. Okay, but I want to pick out some specific things today, and we're going to focus on just a handful of things that can really help you as far as reaching the millionaire status or just reaching some semblance of long-term wealth in and of itself. And I want you guys to believe that you can do it. Okay, I want you to believe that you can build wealth. I want you to believe that you can be a millionaire. I want you to believe that you can be financially successful. And all of these things I'm going to tell you today, they are all things that you can do. Okay, it's not like, you need to go inherit this much money, or you need to go, take out this much debt, or you need to go, do any type of fancy financial footwork. You don't have to do those things in order to become wealthy. And that's what, I'm consistently trying to communicate to you on this show on a day in, day out basis, right? But I want to just teach you from the words of someone else, specifically Dr. Stanley, and specifically want you to know that this particular set of tips and tricks on how to become a millionaire, they're not really tricks at all. Right? It's things that are very practical, and it's things that you can do and you can begin doing today if you're willing to take that step. Now, the whole premise of this book, it's called The Millionaire Next Door, right? Is that people who look rich may not actually be rich, right? And people who may be rich might just be the individual next door, right? It might just be the individual that you didn't know was rich at all. And that's actually most millionaires. Most millionaires are just people who live in your neighborhood who you had no idea built up that much wealth, right? But most people who look rich, they tend to overspend, but actually have modest portfolios and sometimes very big debts. Whereas the rich individuals, the individuals who actually become millionaires and build wealth, they tend to live in middle income neighborhoods, drive economical cars, wear simple clothes, and then they, buy things just off the rack. They don't buy things that are, real nice designer, this or that. They don't care so much about that because they know that that's not going to get them anywhere over the long term. So let's learn some lessons, okay? Some specific lessons from this book, from The Millionaire Next Door. Lesson number 1, income is not wealth. You may say, well, that's pretty intuitive, Dylan. That's pretty obvious, right? But we tend to not be able to get this through our thick heads. Okay. Income is not wealth. Just because somebody makes a great income doesn't mean that they are on some fast track to being wealthy, right? They are going to have to practice some of the same disciplines that an individual who does not make an inordinate amount of income is going to have to practice. Yes, if they practice those things, can they get there faster? Of course, right? But the problem with that is that most individuals who make high incomes don't decide to make those changes. They don't decide to do those things. Yes, higher income households tend to have more wealth than lower and middle income households as well, right? So it is true that individuals who make more income do tend to have higher wealth. But the size of a paycheck explains approximately 30% of the variation of wealth among households. Okay, so only 30% of the difference in wealth between a lower or a middle class household and an upper class income household is explained by the amount of money that they make. Okay, which is relatively low. What really matters is how much of the income gets invested. On average, millionaires invest nearly 20% of their income. And Danko and Stanley, they offer a formula that helps you to determine whether you have a net worth that is commensurate with your income or not. And they say multiply your age times your realized pre-tax annual household income from all sources except inheritances. Divide that by 10. This less any inherited wealth is what your net worth should be at any given time. And this particular formula does have some holes, and I'm not going to get into exactly what those holes are today. But if you ever go and you watch the Money Guy Show, that's another podcast and YouTube channel, I think they give you a pretty good alternative formula as to how you can calculate your, what your net worth needs to be at any given time based on some semblance of this Danko and Stanley formula, okay? But very simply, what the authors are trying to do with this formula and trying to teach with this first lesson, that income does not equal wealth, is simply that even though you are somewhere income-wise, it does not necessarily mean that you can't build wealth, and it also doesn't necessarily mean that you're just going to, stroll right into wealth. You have to do the work. You have to lay the financial foundation regardless of where you are. And this is what I tell you all the time. I tell you that you must lay the financial foundation for yourself. So lesson number 2. Okay, lesson number 1 was that income does not equal wealth. Lesson number 2, work the budget. Okay, lesson number 2 here is the majority of millionaires have a budget. Of those who don't, they have what the authors called an artificial economic environment of scarcity, more commonly known as the pay yourself first idea, right? Where even though they may not have some written budget somewhere, they live where they are paying themselves first. They are having money go into their savings and their investments before anything else, and then living on the rest. So even though they may not budget, you can only spend what you have, right? And so they only spend from what's left over. So they don't necessarily overspend because their investing and saving is already over with by the time they are on to their spending. As for those who do budget and plan out their expenses for the coming year, no, they don't enjoy it any more than the rest of us, but they appreciate the payoff as well as fear the consequences of not doing so. The authors wrote, it's much easier to budget if you visualize the long-term benefits of the task. And we've talked about this before. We've talked about how over the long term, if you can know what you're bringing in and specifically know what's going out every single month and track what's going out, you can become far more disciplined in your spending. You can become far more disciplined in the way that you manage your money. And if you are able to do this, the budget can help you to become a good investor, a good saver. The budget can help you to become a good manager of money where you might not have been otherwise. Okay, so the budget can be a very good tool. And if you work the budget correctly or have this forced scarcity, pay yourself first mindset, right, then you will be able to build wealth. You will be able to become a millionaire over the long term. But not doing so is going to keep you from being where you want to be over the long term. Not doing so is going to put you in the position where, you may, have some investments, you may have some savings, but what's going to end up happening is your spending is likely going to get in the way of your ability to invest or save because you don't know where your money's going. Okay, and not knowing where your money's going and not paying yourself first is a formula for disaster because you're likely going to get to the point many times where you don't have enough money left around to invest, and you have to have that if you want to get to the millionaire status. Okay, so work the budget. Lesson number 3. Know where your dough doth go. Okay, so know where your money is going, which kind of goes to the budget, but specifically speaks to tracking your expenses. Similar to the previous point, almost 2/3 of millionaires can answer yes to this question. Do you know how much your family spends each year on food, clothing, and shelter? In contrast, only 35% of high-income non-millionaires answered yes to this question. So that also speaks to our first lesson there, that income doesn't equal wealth, right? Only 35% of high-income non-millionaires can tell you how much they spend each year, basically on all the frivolous things, all the things that are not needs, all the wants, right? Millionaires are more likely to track their spending. Again, it's the whole idea of how did they get here in the first place? Okay, how were they able to put enough money away to become a millionaire in the first place? Because they knew where their money was going. And if they didn't know where their money was going, they wouldn't have enough money left around to invest. We all have this thing inside of us that if we don't organize, if we don't have some semblance of tracking what's going on in our life, then our life can get out of control, not just with our money, but in any other aspect of our life as well. Okay, so tracking our expenses, tracking where your money is going to keep you, one, from overspending in certain areas, right? Because you may know that you need to spend money at the grocery store, but it's very easy to go to the grocery store and just spend out of your ears, right? It's very easy to go and overspend. You may know that you need to buy clothes, but you may go and you may buy things that are just unnecessarily expensive because you have the money to do so at the time, okay? But if you are actually tracking your expenses, seeing how much you spend on these things, and then making the proper adjustments, then you'll be able to actually invest and save and build wealth and do all the right things over the long term. But again, if you're not able to do that, regardless of your income, it's going to be very, very difficult to build any type of wealth over a long period of time. So track your expenses, know where your money goes, okay? Lesson number 4, know where you want your dough to go. Know where you want your money to go. Another 2/3 of millionaires answered in the affirmative to this question. Do you have a clearly defined set of daily, weekly, monthly, annual, and lifetime goals? One example, a woman who wants to have $5 million by the age of 65, at which she'll retire. At the time of the book's publication, she had already reached millionaire status on an annual income of just $90,000, okay? And I would say a lot of us, especially people who are married and both individuals have jobs, reaching a $90,000 annual income is not out of reach, right? That's two people making $45,000 apiece, which is not impossible. And it's very, very likely that that can be the case, right? And in many cases, one spouse or just a single individual can make $90,000 a year. So saying that you can't do this, that you can't reach millionaire status on your amount of income it's wrong, okay? You're just incorrect, because this is proof that it's true. As for those who answered no to this question, many of them are retired and have already reached their goal of financial independence. Okay, so most of the millionaires who said, nah, we don't, have these goals. We don't have, an idea of where we want our money to go or what we want to do with our money. Most of those individuals aren't even in the accumulation phase of their money. Okay, they are in the phase of let's spend and enjoy. Okay, now they do need to have some goals. They do need to have some ideas, but individuals who have some set goals are much more likely to actually reach those goals over the long term, right? You need to have goals. You need to know what you want your money to do. I call this your why, right? I call this why you're trying to do this in the first place. Why are you budgeting and tracking your expenses? Why are you trying to get out of debt? Why are you investing for your future? Why? And if you don't know why, right, then you're going to have a hard time staying motivated over the long term to get to wherever you want to get to, right? Because if you know where you want to go, you know where you want to get to over some period of time, whether it's a year, whether it's 10 years, 20 years, whatever, right? You actually have a vision, you have an idea of what you want to do, then you're far more likely to be working towards that specific goal and doing things that are going to help you to get there. Okay, but if you don't have any goals like this, you don't have any expectation as to what you want out of life or what you want out of your financial situation over the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 40 years, then you are going to find it very difficult to live a healthy, successful financial life, because you weren't putting at a premium the idea that you need to do certain things in order to get there. Okay, and if you're not putting those things first things first when it comes to managing your money, then you're not going to be able to do the things that you need to do to get there. And the earlier that you start knowing where your money needs to go, knowing where you want your money to go, having a plan, having a goal, right, then the better off you'll be. Because again, we talked about this this week already, is that having time to invest, having time to get your financial situation down pat is a blessing, right? It is very, very helpful to have more time. And the more time that you have, the more you are going to be able to accumulate, the more you are going to be able to make some, riskier bets and riskier decisions, the more you're going to be able to enjoy your money. If you have more time, it's likely that you can hit your goals earlier and enjoy your money earlier, okay? So if you have the time, start now, build your financial foundation, and know where you want your money to go over a long period of time. And it doesn't have to be like this one lady who says she wants to have $5 million by the age of 65, right? It can be less than that, right? It can be earlier than that. It can be later than that. It can be any number of things, but you need to talk about your goals. And if you're married specifically, you need to talk about your goals with your spouse. You need to know what each other wants and get on the same page about what you want financially, and then do everything you can to get to that place together. Okay. Then this kind of brings me to the fifth lesson. The fifth lesson is time is money. Okay. I've taught undergraduate finance classes at the university level, and one of the first things that you teach, one of the most important things when it comes to finance in general, is what we call the time value of money. Okay. All this means is that $1 today is not worth $1 tomorrow. Okay. Dollars become less valuable over time. If I invest today, it's more valuable to invest that money today than it is to invest it tomorrow, all things equal. Okay. So we need to make sure that we understand that time is money in our personal financial life as well. All this budgeting and setting goals, it takes time, but millionaires are willing to spend that time. Prodigious accumulators of wealth spend nearly twice as many hours per month planning their investments as under accumulators of wealth. So they spend nearly twice as much time as those who don't reach that next level of being a wealth accumulator, right? The majority of these prodigious accumulators of wealth agreed with the following statements, while the majority of under accumulators of wealth did not. They said, I spend a lot of time planning my financial future. Okay, that's something that they agreed with. They said, usually I have sufficient time to handle my investments properly. They answered in the affirmative to that. They agreed that when it comes to the allocation of my time, I place the management of my assets before my other activities. Okay, so all this tells me is that these prodigious accumulators of wealth are willing to take the time. They are willing to sacrifice some of their own time in order to get their finances right. And that's all I'm telling you guys that you have to do. Time is money. So even though I want you to get started as soon as possible and build a financial foundation as soon as possible so you can start investing and building wealth as soon as possible, in that case, time is money, right? But in another case, right, while you are trying to do all those things, you need to be making time to make sure that things are right and things are fine-tuned and that you are budgeting and that you are taking time out of your day to make sure that you're invested properly and that your 401k contributions get in and your employer's matching you correctly, or that you're putting enough money away, or that, whatever, right? You need to be making sure that these types of things are correct, and you need to take time out of your day, whether it's just by yourself or with your spouse or with some type of financial professional, to sit down and go over things from time to time. Take the time to do it and you will be better off, right? You don't have to earn a big six-figure salary for planning to pay off. In a survey of 854 middle income workers, Danko and Stanley found a strong positive correlation between investment planning and wealth accumulation. This extra planning doesn't just happen. According to the authors, most prodigious accumulators of wealth have a regimented planning schedule. Each week, each month, each year, they plan their investments. They plan what they are going to do. Okay. And I'm not saying this has to be on your mind and on your plate at all times, because that's not the case. Okay. But if you're not, let's say you do have a financial advisor, if you're not meeting with them once a year, once a quarter, once every 6 months, whatever, okay, then you are not taking the time, right? If you're dealing with your own investments and you're not looking at it, each month, right? At minimum each month, then there may be problems there. Okay, you need to at least glance at things each month. I'm not saying to just sit and worry about them. That's not what you should do, because that can give you anxiety and make you to where you don't want to invest. Okay, but you need to make sure that things are going correctly and things are moving in the right direction. And if you're not doing that, if you're not taking the time and you're not caring, right? If you don't care, then you are not going to get to where others are going to get to, because you're not taking the time to actually build wealth in the correct way. Then, lesson number 6. Love the home you're with. Your choice of home and how often you choose a new one will determine your ability to accumulate wealth. According to the Millionaire Next Door, that wealthy family has been next door for quite a while. Half of millionaires have lived in the same house for more than 20 years. Okay, now again, this is an older book. People are moving more often now. But at the time, 25 years ago, half of millionaires lived in the same house for more than 20 years. And I would guess that this stat probably holds pretty close to true now still, okay? In Stop Acting Rich, Thomas Stanley digs deeper into how your address affects your spending. He writes, "Nothing has a greater impact on your wealth and your consumption than your choices of house and neighborhood. If you live in a high-priced home in an exclusive community, you will spend more than you should, and your ability to save and build wealth will be compromised. People who live in million-dollar homes are not millionaires. They may be high-income producers, but by trying to emulate glittering rich millionaires, they are living a treadmill existence." Basically meaning that a lot of people take out a lot of debt for a lot of things that they can't afford when it comes to their home. Okay. Now, Thomas Stanley cites several statistics to back this up, including 90% of millionaires live in homes valued below $1 million. 28.3% lived in homes valued at $300,000 or less. On average, millionaires have a mortgage that is less than 1/3 of the value of their homes. Okay, meaning that they're either paying those mortgages down or putting hefty down payments down. If you really want to reduce your housing bill, join the 67,000 millionaires who live in mobile homes. Okay, now I'm not suggesting you live in mobile homes. I'm just saying that's what Dr. Thomas Stanley says here, right? He's saying 67,000 millionaires live in mobile homes. So if that's not the definition of the millionaire next door, I don't know what is. Okay, so if you're looking to buy a home, Stanley provides this advice. The market value of the home you purchase should be less than 3 times your household's total annual realized income. And so what I tell you guys is that the payment that you make each month should be no more than a quarter of your take-home pay for that month. Okay, because that leaves you plenty of room in order to pay for whatever you need to otherwise and to save and invest as well. Okay, so basically, don't spend too much on your housing because it really ends up not mattering when it comes to your wealth building over time. But people will say, isn't home ownership one of the primary ways that wealth has been built over time? Sure, but how much is your home going up in value? Okay, and how much does it matter to have a home that you're going to live in, right? You're not going to take money out of it when you lack investments and lack money to be able to retire and still live in that home, right? Even though your home does go into your net worth calculation as you build equity and as you end up owning it, right? It doesn't go right along with your liquid net worth in the exact same way, okay? So that's lesson number 6. Lesson number 7, love the spouse you're with. The majority of wealthy people are married and stay married to the same person. Of course, marriage isn't and shouldn't be about money. Several studies have shown that people who are married accumulate more wealth than those who are single or divorced. Now, that's not to say, I don't want to discourage anybody, but that's not to say that being single or divorced is a position where you can't build wealth, but that's to say that being married and working with somebody and being encouraged with somebody else is a better way to go about it, all else equal. However, it's important to marry someone with the right financial habits. There are too many marriages that go down the drain because you don't have the same why and you don't have the same understanding of finances and you don't have the same financial habits and ideas. In the majority of millionaire households studied by Danko and Stanley, the husband is the main breadwinner and tends to be frugal, but the wife is even more frugal. Okay, so let me read that again. The husband is the main breadwinner and tends to be frugal, but the wife is even more frugal. As they wrote, a couple cannot accumulate wealth if one of its members is a hyper consumer. Okay, so what's this saying? This is saying if you want to become a millionaire, you both need to be frugal, right? You both need to have some frugality to you. Okay, that's not to say you need to be a tightwad or you need to just not ever spend money. Okay, but what that is to say is that you need to be conscious of where your money's going. You need to be a saver. You need to be somebody. Now, that's not to say you need to be naturally slanted towards saving, but you need to be somebody who actively saves money. Okay. So you need to be a saver of money. You need to be an investor. You need to be somebody who doesn't spend more than they make. Okay. You need to work together, have a budget, follow the budget, and track your spending. It's difficult, right? It's difficult to work with somebody else on your finances, but it is so worth it if you can get on the same page. And again, you can't have one of these individuals be a hyper consumer because it's just going to eat away at your ability to do anything. It's going to cause a lot of strife, a lot of fights, and it's going to hinder your ability to build wealth over the long term. Okay. So being married is a good thing. Being married can help you to build wealth, but you have to do it the right way. Then lesson number 8, don't drive away your wealth. The majority of millionaires own their cars rather than lease. Okay. Approximately a quarter have a current year model, but another quarter drive a car that is 4 years old or older. More than a third tend to buy used vehicles, What's the most popular car maker among millionaires? According to Stop Acting Rich by Thomas Stanley, Toyota is the most popular car maker. So who's driving all the BMWs and Mercedes? Not millionaires. 86% of prestige or luxury cars are not bought by millionaires. In fact, Stanley writes that 1 in 3 people who traded in their old car for a new one were upside down and owed more on the trade-in than its market value. It's tough to get wealthy doing stuff like that. And I've told you time and time again that if you are going and you are financing vehicles, it's going to be very, very hard to build wealth in the first place. Okay. But if you're going and you're buying luxury cars, you're buying things that are very costly and they are still depreciating assets, meaning that they are going down in value as soon as you drive them off the lot. That is not a good way to become a millionaire. That's not a good way to become somebody who builds wealth over time. But driving something that is reliable and that's going to get you from A to B and that's going to do the job over time is going to be the best way there. That's why the most popular car maker among millionaires is a Toyota. I'm not saying this because, hey, I'm right on track, but I drive a Toyota Camry, okay? And the reason that I do this, very reliable car. That's probably the thought process of most millionaires as well, okay? I'm just saying that when it comes to building wealth, it doesn't have to do with looking like you have wealth. Most people buy new cars because they want to look like they have something. They want to look like they made it. They feel like they deserve this new car. You only deserve it if you can pay for it in cash and it's not too high of a percentage of your overall income and your overall wealth. If you have $4 million, right, and you want to buy a $70,000 truck, be my guest, okay? But if you make $40,000 a year and you want to buy a $70,000 truck over 84 months, then you need to step to the back of the line and reevaluate exactly what's going on in your financial life, because that is not the way you're going to get wealthy over time. And then the 9th and last lesson that we need to learn is that the rich are different. They're happier, okay? At this point, you might be wondering whether all this living below your means is worth it. Sure, millionaires have bigger portfolios, but are they happier? Danko and Stanley's research indicates that they are. According to their research, financially independent people are happier than those in their same income or age cohort who are not financially secure. First of all, prodigious accumulators of wealth worry less than under accumulators of wealth. There's a peace of mind that comes from living below your means and having money in the bank, but they also don't expect status purchases, such as those cars like I was just talking about, to improve their happiness, because evidence shows it doesn't happen. Among the people surveyed, those who drive a BMW and wear a Rolex are not happier than those who drive a Honda and wear a Timex. Okay, so what this tells us, right, what we learn here is that just because you're rich doesn't mean that you're miserable. Have you ever heard somebody say that rich people are just miserable? Well, in general, that's not true. And it's especially not true among millionaires and the millionaires next door. Okay, those people are actually much happier. And you got to think about all the stress and worry that money brings into people's lives. Okay, and if you don't have that stress and that worry, then it's going to be a lot easier to be happy. You're going to walk with a little less weight on your shoulders. You're going to have a little easier time breathing. You're going to have a lot less going on in your mind throughout the day, because you don't have to worry about making that next payment, or paying to keep the lights on, or paying your mortgage, or paying for some car payment that you shouldn't have got under in the first place. Okay, the rich are happier, and in general, they tend to be very content. Right? They tend to be very happy where they are as they build wealth, right? They tend to be very good givers of money as well, right? Which in general, those things are going to make you happy. You're going to be happy when you can look around and go, I have enough even when I'm not a millionaire. And then as you build up wealth, because you're going to need to build up wealth in order to live on later anyway, right? Then you're going to be a happier person. You're not happy because of the wealth, but you're happy because of the person that you are as you built the wealth, as you became a millionaire in general, okay? Money does not make you happy, okay? Now, I don't want you to think that I'm saying that, but the process, the characteristics that make somebody someone who is going to become a millionaire, those individuals are generally happier. Okay, so you have to understand that over a long period of time, you are going to have to build some money up for yourself, because otherwise you're going to be working until you're 90. You're not going to have anything to live on, and that is just a sad sight to see. So one way or another, you're going to have to take your finances into your own hands. Okay, so take these lessons to heart, understand what I'm saying here, and really pay attention to what's going on, and read The Millionaire Next Door. It is a very, very useful, good book that will allow you to build wealth over the long term if you just take heed to some of the statistics and some of the facts that they give you. Okay, so hopefully this helps you to understand a little better how becoming a millionaire occurs, and then hopefully it can help you to start taking some of the steps in the right direction to becoming a millionaire and to becoming wealthy yourself. So thanks for watching this video. If you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions, and you and I can begin working together, pushing towards your long-term financial goals, and then ultimately pushing you on towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single individual who is watching or listening to this show on a day-to-day basis. So tune in tomorrow as I continue talking about personal finance topics that I think could be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. So thanks for watching this episode of Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. God bless.